Howdy, I just want to say please look after yourself in this very difficult time. We may all be apart, but we're in this together.
Howdy. You know, there were a pocket full of Simpsons episodes that weren't always well received around the world. Sometimes the episodes were heavily censored or outright banned in some countries. So let's chat about something kind of obscure and fun. Let's check out the 6 censored or banned Simpsons episodes. Also, I'm certainly not saying I agree with these being banned or censored. I mainly just want to explore how or why they were censored, but I'll try and give a bit of my personal opinion as we go through. And thank you to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Later on, I'll talk a bit about the nice experience I had with them. But for now, on to the countdown. For number 6, Weekend at Burnsy's for its heavy drug use.
Homer, you're doing drugs!
I remember when Weekend at Burnsy's first hit Australia. They immediately flagged it as adults only, and I had to stay up super late to see it. The UK took one step further and refused to air this episode at all, for several years. The reason? It was seen by some as glorifying drug use.
Let Daddy see and hear magical things you will never experience.
As you might remember, crows end up attacking Homer, causing him excruciating pain as they peck at his eyes, among other parts.
That is not a worm!
Ugh. So he's prescribed medicinal marijuana. Yeah, I realize I'm pronouncing it wrong, I just think that's a more fun way to say it. Like champagne or onions.
But isn't marijuana or dope illegal?
Only for those who enjoy it. Medical use of marijuana is legal in this state.
Anyway, Homer seems to form an addiction to the marijuana and his family starts worrying about him. Though ironically, he actually becomes a star at work since he's now stoned enough to laugh at Mr. Burns' horrendous jokes. Unfortunately, Fox backpedaled pretty quickly on this episode, since they were worried about the idea of glorifying drugs to younger viewers. As a result, there was a censorship of much of Homer's drug use, and they cut down on the severity of his addiction. But it still remains one of the only Simpsons episodes to receive a 14+ rating. Even now, I never actually saw this episode on TV again throughout years of Simpsons reruns. It wasn't until I hunted it down on DVD that I even got a second chance to see it. The ending particularly is really funny, and it's actually one of my favorite season 13 episodes, but it's much harder to find on TV. And for number 5, Money Bart for the Banksy couch gag. While an episode about Lisa getting good at baseball through statistics didn't really stick with me that much, it had perhaps the most brutal, confronting, chilling couch gag I've ever seen in the entire series. In case you'd like a refresher, we're confronted by a massive Korean sweatshop. Here, we see a staggering amount of Korean people working endlessly under vile conditions, all to churn out Simpsons episodes and merchandise. We see dramatic signs of slave labor, and even the bones of dead workers. Ugh. In fact, it's so jaded and dark that the only humorous moment is when it turns out a unicorn sticks holes in the DVDs. When Fox first saw this, they censored certain parts of this version for being even more miserable than its final version was. As a result, it seems like we never got to see the guest artist Banksy's full vision. But even among this exaggerated take, how great is it that we get to see all these creative, thoughtful guest artists helping to bring life to the old Simpsons couch gag? Personally, I don't think experiences always have to be happy to be worthwhile, and I certainly remember this couch gag vividly, even many years later. And for number 4, Homer's phobia and the representation of homosexuality. I always really enjoy this episode when I happen to find it, not just for the comedy, but for the graceful message of the acceptance of others. It was actually one of my first introductions as a kid to the concept of people having different sexual orientations. And it did get me thinking how different people can have different tastes. On the very rare chance that you've forgotten this episode somehow, Homer is paranoid that Bart might be gay. And since Homer doesn't understand the LBGT community much more than a child, I actually learned with Homer when I first saw the episode as a kid.
Homer, what have you got against gays?
You know, it's not usual.
Sadly, back in the 90s, the censors were uncomfortable with this episode. They were generating literal pages of complaints from almost every line the character spoke. The censors didn't even want to use the word gay, let alone discussing it. In fact, the network concluded with a note, "The topic and substance of this episode are unacceptable for broadcast."
Oh, Homer, please, you're embarrassing yourself.
They're embarrassing America. They turned the Navy into a floating joke.
Fortunately, the Fox president was changed around that time, and they were a little more lenient. Otherwise, we probably never would have seen this episode at all.
But any way you choose to live your life is okay with me.
Huh? He thinks you're gay.
And for number 3, The Cartridge Family and its depiction of gun use.
Whoa, careful there, Annie Oakley.
I don't have to be careful, I got a gun.
This was a memorable episode, alright, and at times it can be pretty uncomfortable. The challenge of gun control has often been a touchy, controversial topic in society. So when Homer does get a gun and completely abuses the weapon, the censors were more than a little jumpy.
Potentially dangerous?
Relax, that just limits you to 3 handguns or less.
Woohoo!
There were 2 portions in particular that caused a lot of controversy. One is where Homer straight up points a gun at Marge's face,
Okay, open your eyes.
or where Bart aims the gun at Milhouse while playing. And, well, yeah. Both as a kid and even now, I personally found it pretty ugly seeing Homer pointing a gun at his wife. A couple of critics even stated that they thought that this was a point of no return for Homer. And I've got to admit, it felt creepy to me after that Marge would stay with someone that ever pointed a gun to her head.
Of all the terrible things you've ever done in your life, this is the worst. The most despicable.
In the USA, rebroadcasts frequently censor out these 2 gunplay scenes. And in some UK outlets, they didn't air the episode at all. And even when they did finally air it, they also cut certain parts of the episode. Even the NRA wasn't happy with the Simpsons team, sending them multiple complaints saying they were being portrayed poorly in the episode. They apparently thought it lampooned gun culture. But to be fair, the NRA do take away Homer's license. They even save the day in the end, so I felt both sides got a reasonable amount of stage light. And that was the production team's intention. They were very intentionally trying not to present a pro or anti-gun slant, but rather to try and portray both sides as equally as possible, and let the viewer decide. Whether or not they succeeded either way, well, that's a hard call to make.
See you in hell, dinner plate.
And for number 2, Blame It on Lisa, and its depiction of Rio, Brazil. You might remember this one as the episode that Homer's kidnapped and held at ransom by criminals in Rio.
I've sent a ransom note. If your family wants to see you alive again, they would be wise to pay.
And as you might have guessed, Rio wasn't very happy, particularly the tourist board of Rio. In fact, they were so mouth-foamingly furious, they even threatened to sue the show, and the Brazilian government was backing them on this. In their words, they were suing the show for damaging the international image of the city. A media frenzy began in Rio after it was released. Critics were upset by both the cliches and some of the stereotypes not even related to Brazil. Like, why did some Brazilians have Spanish accents?
I was just distracting you while my children robbed you.
You can't protect her forever, you stupid lady.
And apparently, songs like the Macarena weren't even local or relevant in Brazil. Luckily, the First Amendment of the United States protects parodies, so the Simpsons team's lawyers managed to encourage the Rio Tourism Board to back off. But I can certainly get where they're coming from. I mean, Rio was painted as a place of crime, filth, slums, rat infestations, and a whole lot of sexual references. As a result, James L. Brooks issued a full apology to Rio. I guess the Rio Tourism Board had cooled off by then, as they dropped their lawsuit completely. But it's still a very rarely aired episode due to this controversy. And before we get to number 1, let's go through some quick honorable mentions. Wild Barts Can't Be Broken and the Washington Sniper.
Look at those rat kids did to my car! Oh.
This episode was shelved for some time, due to, well, severely bad timing, and due to the incredibly tragic events at the time. Without going into too much detail, there were some horrible Washington sniper attacks in 2002. Basically, during Wiggum's police-enforced curfew, Moe announces that sniper at the All-Star was a blessing in disguise, while Wiggum announces that any child found outside after dark will be shot. Understandably, these lines were seen as pretty twisted after the sniper attacks, so the episode was postponed for some time. 30 Minutes Over Tokyo and the seizure scene.
Alright.
Though Japan was, just in general, pretty upset over this episode and how its country was depicted, to the point where not only would they not air it, but they wouldn't even include it in the Japanese DVDs. While obviously they didn't like much of the episode's stereotyping of Japan, the scene they disliked the most was where the family gets seizures from the Japanese cartoon. Mums I'd Like to Forget for Lesbian Activity. If you saw my last video, this one will probably be pretty dang predictable. At first, it's mostly a pretty substandard 20-second season plot. Marge reconnects with some of her friends who are now mums, but this means Bart has to spend some time with some kids he doesn't like. And as usual, he's bitter and whines to Marge the whole way. Frankly, without the controversial scene, there's like nothing I remember about this episode. And the, controversial part? Well, once Marge decides to leave her new fellow mum friends at the end of the episode, they all begin to make out. Fox apparently removed this scene from all further airings. Interestingly, the scene where Bart acquires and blows up fireworks also got cut, but only in the UK release.
I'll put these tools away.
Cape Fear and jokes banned in Germany. I don't necessarily know if you'd remember this part, because it's such a small side scene at the start of the episode. In a very tiny segment at the start, McBain does some weak stand-up material and slanders homosexuals.
That is some outfit, Scoey. It makes you look like a homosexual.
Germany didn't take too kindly to this, and for many years, Germany didn't air one of the greatest episodes of all time. I'm surprised they didn't just start the episode 10 to 20 seconds later.
This is horrible. The Fox network has sunk to a new low.
The City of New York versus Homer Simpson. This may be the most rarely shown episode in all of The Simpsons, and in my opinion, understandably so. Basically, Barney dumps Homer's car at the World Trade Center on a drunken joyride, and after the devastating events of September 11th, the episode was completely banned from airing on American TV, even many years later when the episode occasionally did air. It had been edited at multiple parts, mainly with cuts to any showing of the towers. But the biggest edit was an argument between two guys in Tower 1 and Tower 2.
Sorry about that, guy. They stick all the jerks in Tower 1.
Anyway, on to number 1.
Can we come back next year, Dad?
We'll see.
Treehouse of Horror 27, apparently for too much graphic violence. This is considered by some the most dark Treehouse of Horror episode, rivaled only by Treehouse of Horror 5, with characters constantly dying brutally. Normally, we can assume something intended to shock and push the boundaries in gore on Treehouse of Horror, but this one was really designed to be harsh. Maybe since it was a 600 episode, they thought, hey, why not go for broke? One of the episode's most morbid offenders was probably the BFF RIP story, which sees Lisa's imaginary friend viciously murdering a string of children, many of which are done on screen.
I'm gonna kill everyone you love, and they'll blame you, because nobody else can see me.
And yet another snowball is killed, which Homer promptly trashes. Even Milhouse wasn't killed directly on screen in Treehouse of Horror 5. Here, he's outright suffocated in front of us. Yeesh. And the other big offender is probably the final segment, which sees Bart eviscerating, stabbing, burning, amputating, and twisting the heads off of every Springfield resident he can get his hands on. Like, barely anyone is spared. And he later stands up, and we get to see the eviscerated, splattered carcasses of every Springfield resident they could conjure up.
Violence never solved anything. Except this.
In some countries, this episode was banned for a while, but later it fortunately did find an airing after 8:45 PM, when they thought less younger viewers would be watching, so all the international viewers could still enjoy the 600 episode celebration, for the gloriously unapologetic gorefest it was. And as I mentioned, thank you to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Raycon provides innovative headphone designs at a price that doesn't break the bank. Inspired by underdogs and big dreams, they're aiming to create the next wave in wireless audio technology. I've actually been switching through different Bluetooth earbuds at the gym for like 5 years now, and I can definitely agree the sound is crystal clear on the Raycons. I even found myself hearing little instrument details I hadn't heard before. I've tried a few different brands that have fallen out of my ears during workouts, but these actually fit properly, and they're comfy. So far I've been using the Everyday E25 earbuds, and it's easily paired with my phone's Bluetooth and has a nice bass thump to it, which can get up to 6 hours of playtime. A nice extra detail is the compact carrying case can charge the earbuds up to 4 times in a single charge, so it's handy for traveling too. You can go to buyraycon.com/PhantomStrider to get 15% off your order. Raycon earbuds start at about half the price of other premium wireless earbud brands, and I personally think they sound just as crisp. Anyway,
Thanks for your patience.
if you have any thoughts on the controversy behind these episodes yourself, feel free to leave your own thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Ow.